Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from October 4th. I had to get the word October out. A little struggle there. October 4th, 2024. And I'm recording this on April 3rd, 2025. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is most relevant because these markets are always moving and changing, as are the prices of these books, as we'll see when we look at just the difference in these 6 months. Also, as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic-Con Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week, they put out a list of 10 books separately. We look at those two lists, see what books were moving in the market, see what books were jumping in value, what books were people chasing and buying in big numbers. And then we see what's happened to their value in the market and their rate of sale in the market since. Should we have been patient? Should we have chased those books in the moment? And try to just learn a little bit more about whether or not, so that we make better decisions about what books we jump on in the moment and what books we're patient on. This week we got 16 or 17 books to talk about. I forget. 16 books to talk about. So let's get started and see what we can learn this week. First up, we got Voltron, Defender of the Universe, number 1 from 1985. First Voltron in American comics. And basically, we started getting some casting news back in the fall. And that was what caused us to hit the list. 80 to 90 bucks for raw copies back then. 9.8s, 250 to 270. Now we're looking at like $20 to $90 for a raw copy. 9.8s have jumped up, 350 to 400, but only a couple sales there. So we're going to call it steady worth it. The raw copies are really right in that same range for high grade stuff, still up toward 80, 90. There are some that you can get some sales on, but the 9.8s have also crept up. So we're going to call this, steady worth it. You could argue maybe up a little bit because of the 9.8s, but just not enough sales there to sell me on that. So steady and worth it for this one. This live action is still supposedly coming. I think Cavill is still supposedly attached, so we'll see what happens here. Next, we have The Beauty, number 1 from 2015. This is the cover A, and we also got casting news here. People like Ashton Kutcher, Evan Peters, and some others. There was a bunch of casting news here for this series that's been kind of in the works for a very long time. Caused this book to go to $15, 9.8 go to $110. Now it's a $10 to $30 book. 9.8, only one recent sale on it went for $30 also, but there are raw sales going up to clear to $30. So we're going to call it steady and I'll be back. Again, based on the raw sales, because that is the vast majority of sales. No reason to have chased this necessarily, but you wouldn't have really lost much on the raw side if you did. Next, we have The Beauty number 1, the Jenny Frison variant, and this one was going for $30 to $60 back then for raw copies. Now it's a $20 to $30 book, so it's basically dropped back and going for very similar values to the regular A cover when it used to go for significantly more. Also, one 9.8 sale here just for $80, but this is down in a trap. This was a $30, $60 book, consistently going $45, $50, and now it's a $20, $30 book. So this book has taken a step back, whereas the other cover has stayed pretty steady, bringing them kind of in line with each other for folks chasing this book. Not a huge difference there. Maybe a good time to jump on the Frison variant, because historically it has always gone for more, but not right now. Next, we have X-Men number 5, the Elizabeth Torque 1 in 25 that came out just this last week. And this is hitting the list because it's an error. Basically, it should say issue number 5, but it says issue number 1 on the front cover. I don't believe it actually got recalled, so think what you will about whether or not this is an error that has any legs. Normally, for an error to have legs, it's got to basically disappear from the market completely. Like it had to be recalled completely. This one did not. So it was 20 to 30 back then. Now it's still 20, but only one sale and not very much interest in this book at all. There's some listings for less than 20. So down and I'll be back. No reason to have chased this particular error because it didn't really come off the market in a way that made it super limited. All right, next we're moving into covers. And for the second week in a row, we have Mark Spears' Monsters. Number 1, the open order variant of Frankenstein's Bride. I think that's who this is supposed to be. Raw copies, 80 to 150 at this point. Last week when we talked about it, it was like a $50, $60 book in that first week. By this point, it was 80 to 150. Now it's still a 160 to 260 book for raw copy, 430 to 600 for 9.8. So this is still up in straight cash, even on the second week peak that we kind of talk about, because it wasn't the peak. The second week was not the peak. This book has continued to churn along, broken all the rules, and continues to go for big value. Next, we have Hello Darkness, number 3, the Paulo Rivera unlockable variant. This was also on the list last week, going for 40 to 50. Now, by this point, it was up to 70 to 90, and now it's 70 to 80, so a steady I'll be back. Another book that kind of bucked the usual trend of a second week peak not holding. This one's held pretty steady. It's maybe a little bit off the top end, but for the most part, still right in that same range, although not a ton of sales going on with this book. All right, with that, we're going to move into some comic buzz, and we got Ghost Rider number 19, first cover appearance of Phantasma. Basically, this character was supposed to be part of the new Champions team that they had announced, caused it to hit the list. It had been on the list 2 weeks ago. It was back on the list for basically the same price. When it was on 2 weeks ago, it was $25.30. Now it's $25.35, so basically the same value here. And now this book is a $5 to $20 book, 9.8, 70 to 100. So down in a trap. I don't even know if this Champion series has started. I have not been paying a lot of attention to most of the Marvel solicits lately because I haven't been reading much Marvel. So, and this book didn't interest me anyway. But yeah, so this appears to have turned into a trap. Don't know if the series has come out even yet, or if there's been any interest in it at all, or this character. Next, we have more of this character, though. We got Ghost Rider Robbie Reyes special number 1 that included a story on the origin of Phantasma. Back then, it was $10 to $15, 9.8 going for $60. Now it's a $4 to $10 book, 9.8, 35 to 90, but that's, yeah, just kind of that low end 9.8 kind of range. So 9.8s are kind of the same range, but literally it's like a 35, a 90, and I think there was only one other sale that might have been like 50 on the 9.8s. Raw copies were 4 to 10, down and I'll be back, because that's the vast majority of the sales, and there's not many of those either. So, next, we're going to move into MCU. We had 3 MCU-related books. First up, we have Amazing Fantasy number 15, first appearance of Amadeus Cho. This book been on and off the list multiple times over the years. Hitting the list this time because rumors of casting. I don't know if this was official or not. I didn't actually, as you've noticed, there's no JP said this week because I didn't actually do it this week, so I didn't have full notes on whether or not this was actually an official casting or not. But back then, raw copies were going for 80 to 112, 9.8, 310. Now it's a $70 to $140 book raw, 9.8, 275 to 350. So we're going to call this steady and worth it. The prices back then are right in the middle of the range of the prices right now. You can get a little bit of extra value on some of them. Some of them you're on the lower end, but yeah, still some interest in Amadeus Cho, and this book is still, though, way down from some of the previous peaks on this book. So it's at a more reasonable spec range now than it had been before, but it's still maybe a little high for me. Next, we have Silver Surfer number 3, first appearance of Mephisto. And basically, they name dropped him during the Agatha series, so everybody went out and grabbed the book thinking he was going to appear. He didn't. He still has never appeared. I know there's still rumors he's supposedly going to be in the Ironheart show of all things, but anyway, back then 4.0 went for 200, and 9.4 went for 2,500, and there were lots of sales. Now raw copies will run you $70 to $300. A 4.0, 240 to 270, so that's up a little bit. But a 9.4 is $1,500, so that is down. I looked across some other grades, and it was basically fairly steady here on this book. Some things you'd gotten some little higher sales. Some of the high end stuff had backed up just slightly, like with that 9.4. So overall, we'll just call it steady and worth it. Obviously, great Silver Age key from 1968, key Marvel villain, but not a lot going on here. I'd be always looking for deals on this particular book. Next, another book that's been on and off the list 50 times in the 6 years I've been doing this. That's probably a little exaggeration, but at least 20. Ghost Rider number 28, first appearance of the Midnight Suns. This also has a cameo of the Nine, and which is what was rumored as a spinoff from the Agatha show. So that's why this was hitting the list. Raw copies $25, 9.8 $60 back then. Now it's a $2 to $10 book raw, 9.8 $55 to $100. Down in a Trap. There's been no reason to ever chase this book, and that continues to be the case. When there's news, just wait. This book comes crashing down. There's a bump, people go crazy for it, and then there's a ton of these out there. No reason to chase this book. Next, we're gonna have a whole bunch of DC movie universe books to talk about. Rare, that are more DC than Marvel stuff. First up, we got Batman No Man's Land, #1 from 1999. This is a bit of a stretch on this one. It was hitting the list because they literally said the phrase No Man's Land during the Penguin series, even though it didn't reference like anything directly related to the book. They just used the words No Man's Land to describe an area of the city after the flooding event. But it wasn't like anything official or anything like that. But people were buying this book in lots of numbers, not necessarily for much value. $4 back then. 9.8 did go for $125, mainly because there's not very many 9.8s in this book. Now it's still a $4 to $5 book. We'll call it steady and I'll be back. There was no real link to the story, and there was no real reason to chase it, but luckily people were buying it for basically what they can buy it for now. So, next, we have DC Comics Presents, #26. First appearance of the new Teen Titans, Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire. Basically, this is hitting the list because the report is the lady that wrote the Supergirl movie that they're currently working on has been hired to write a Titans movie. So that's why people were chasing this book. Raw copies $250, 9.8, 926 back then. Now raw copies $25 to $150 on recent sales, so that's down. 9.8, $675 to $800. That's also down. This book has been coming down. Might be time for me to upgrade my copy. I'm down in a trap on this one compared to 6 months ago. Yeah, I'm thinking. I say this and now other people go out and buy one, but might be time for me to upgrade mine. That's all I can think, seeing these kind of prices. Next, we have Tales of the Teen Titans, #44, first appearance of Nightwing, origin of Deathstroke. A couple of things going on here that was causing us to hit the list. We got news that the Dick Grayson, Jason Todd dynamic duo movie is going to be animated, or that seems to be where they're headed, but we also got rumors of a Deathstroke and Bane movie. So there was a couple of things going on here, caused us to hit the list. This is first Nightwing, origin of Deathstroke. Raw copies back then, $75, 9.8, $275. Now it's a $30 to $60 book for a raw copy, 9.8, $250 to $280. So down and I'll be back, a very slight step back. Most of the sales are raw, that's why I did that. But you could also argue steady and I'll be back looking at those 9.8 prices. But yeah, just an I'll be back, just a little step back. You could do a little better now than you could 6 months ago on one of my favorite books of all time. Next, new Teen Titans #2, first appearance of Deathstroke. Obviously those same rumors had Deathstroke's first appearance hitting the list, $75 to $130. 9.8, $630 to $700 back then. Now it's a $30 to $175 for recent raw sales. 9.8, $7 to $800. So up and worth it here. This book is taking on a slight creep forward on the 9.8s. Even on the higher end raws have jumped up just a little bit. So up and worth it on this one. A lot of interest in maybe finally getting that Deathstroke movie in some form that we thought we were going to get a long time ago during the Snyderverse. It never happened, but yeah. So we'll see if we get a Deathstroke and Bane movie from James Gunn. Next, we have Batman Vengeance of Bane, #1, the other character that's been mentioned in those rumors. So first appearance of Bane hitting the list, $75 to $100 back then for raw, 9.8, $300. Now it's a $25 to $100 for raw, 9.8, $275 to $375, or $275 to $325. So that's as steady and worth it as you could get in values. The book hasn't really moved from 6 months ago. This is probably still somewhat of in my mind, maybe a slightly undervalued book, undervalued key, but there are a lot of them out there. But yeah, great book, great character, and nice to see for once that DC made up more of the list 6 months ago than Marvel. So that is this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching as always. I really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time. Later.